Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Radio ROADCROSS. This is your show host speaking, Dr. Marina Nani, and I have the privilege of inviting you to the Stardust Dialogue. And I brought you amazing people with extraordinary experiences and people who stand for their beliefs, people who are able to share their vision because the precious gift of life called you must be shared with the world. We are here today to talk about is feminism at the crossroads in 2017. Over to you, Viola.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I am here in Chicago and it's 11 o'clock in the morning. And it's a beautiful day. And as you know, I am the host of the Feminine Capital Rhythm Show in Radio ROADCROSS. So for me, for a while, I stopped talking about feminism and I talk about feminine and masculine energy in harmony. And or I talk about how we can go beyond the concept of femininity and masculinity and go to that sphere where together we are creating and we want to create a sustainable world that works for all of us. But for me, it's a pleasure to be today and talk together and share about how is that wave, how the wave took us to this place, and how many of us, like myself, we are going beyond the concept and we're going into that place where we can go into the harmony of living together and honoring the feminine and the masculine in each one of us. This is me today, and I'm very happy to be with you here.
Thank you so much, Viola. I'm going to ask the same question. What does feminism means to you? Our next panelist is based in South Africa, and Rory is going to join us now.
Good day, everybody. How's everybody doing today?
Hello. Welcome. Happy to have you here.
Yeah, we had a few technical issues, but I'm here after a bit of effort. Thank you very much for having me on the show, and lovely to be part of this discussion. I think it's going to be a very interesting discussion. It certainly was on Facebook prior to the show. So yeah.
You know that this all started with no planning. Perhaps the universe wants us to go into and dig deep and see what is the reality of this, because all I asked for help to write a good quality article for men for the Sovereign, which is the global magazine for heart-centered entrepreneurs, and is going to be launched in September. So I needed help because I don't claim I know it all. So I always ask for help, and everybody jumped in. And apart from the live conversation you've seen on Facebook, I have hundreds of emails, hundreds of messages. So it's too big for myself to handle. I need help, and I had to ask you and Viola to help me discuss this topic, which seems to be a hot topic and seems to be a very important topic. Even most people don't talk about feminism. Most people don't understand what feminism is. Personally, I don't know. I am learning a lot, and recently I've seen a lot of footage on this topic, and I've seen a very amazing movie which moved me, shake me basically. So I decided that I need help, and we need to go through this with the best intentions of heart, and just not thinking is about me or you, is about our audience, is the people we could help together. Over to you, Rory.
Okay, so I think a little introduction of myself is also probably due. Hey, my background is entrepreneurship. I'm a businessman first and foremost. Beyond that, I'm a business consultant. I do business coaching as well. I also do an awful lot of sort of private philanthropy work. And I'm stage speaking in general about all sorts of different topics. But funnily enough, men's rights and women's growth and development in the workplace is something that I actually address quite often, and company cultures. is something I follow quite a lot. I'm also fairly well researched at the topic in hand of feminism. I have made it a sort of personal study for the last 4 or 5 years now. And likewise, a study of men's rights activism and so on, the social justice development of the world and society. So I actually would like to address something with you two ladies first before we start at all. I saw somebody posted up just now the definition of feminism according to Google. So I just want to be very clear of what we're going to define feminism as before we start. According to Google, its definition is the advocacy for women for equality of the sexes. If you go and you look in the Oxford Dictionary definition, I can't remember it off the top of my head now perfectly, word for word, but it's something along the lines of an advocacy group for equality of the sexes, and it drops the woman out of it. If you go and you read the Huffington Post, you will get 40, maybe 50 definitions that are completely different from each other. So I'd like to just make sure that we're all working off the same rules here. So what do you want to operate on, the Google definition?
I like clarity, and also I like the fact that now we have the chance to offer our audience something that they cannot Google, something they never heard before, something that is authentic to your own experience, something that you hold in your heart and you want to share, something that means something beyond other definitions or other people's definitions, because I don't want to jump into stereotypes. I don't want to jump into what other people think, and I really only matters what you think. What is your take on feminism in 2017?
Well, I think as a psychotherapist and coach since 1993, I have been working with men and women about what does it mean for them in different countries. What is the pain and the injury of being not recognized, being feminine or being a man or being a woman? To many years, well, we have women who've been having less chances in their workplace, or less chances socially, or less chances to apply for certain work or certain studies. In my case, personally, I grew up with a woman. We are 3 women, a widow. My mom became a widow at 24, and I have a sister. So I want to tell you that personally, I've been privileged because I grew up in Venezuela, where women has been empowered for many years. And especially myself, growing up with a woman that between the 3 of us, we managed a home. Personally, I'm quite weak physically. Like, I'm this kind of woman who, if I want to open a jar, I will give to somebody else to do it. But this is myself. But I've been entrepreneuring and working since I'm 13 years old. Now I'm 58. So I've been for 45 years a provider for my family and having many chances. And personally, I never have felt discriminated because of the circumstances of my life. I have been maybe guarded or overprotected by my own family, and that helped me to even go faster or more dynamic. But I have been dealing with the pain of women who's doing PhD, who are applying for a job, who in their own context of family, the injury of how is it not being at the same level. For that, my slogan is I care for equality. And nowadays I care for equality for men too. So it's not only equality for women, it's equality for race, it's equality for women, it's equality for men. So for me, we are here into this conversation, this sharing about, for me, what is caring for equality in different contexts, in different communities. Because as my background, I'm from Middle East. I was born in Iraq, and I moved at 5 to Lebanon, and at 13 we moved to Venezuela, and I have been migrant almost all my life. And at 44, I finally chose to migrate to the new country, which is Cyprus, and this time for love, not because of war and not because of complication. And all these states, all these places where I have been, of course, I have dealt with women and men. And what is it to be a woman, a shining woman, and a woman who's fighting her way through being immigrant and stopping schooling and all these things. And I've been as entrepreneur from very, very early age. So I started at 13 working in shoe stores and hairdressing, and slowly grow up until the last 10 years of my work it was in insurance company, and then I changed and retrained to be a psychotherapist. And since 1993, I'm working with people and for people. I'm also
we have Dr. Cherry Chapman from United Kingdom.
Yeah.
And she is making a very interesting addition to my question. She thinks, personally, that feminism is limiting for both sexes. What do you think?
Yeah. Yes, please.
I would, well, I mean, the first thing that I would like to say is, if I was to describe you in any formal fashion, Viola, I'd like to say that I believe that you're more an egalitarian than a feminist, to be honest. What you stand for is basically the same thing that I stand for in egalitarianism, which is why I actually don't like feminism, because the question today, I think, really is exactly as Cheryl now says there. Personally, I think it's limiting for both sexes. I think the question is, what is feminine in 2017? And I've studied the history of feminism, and what happened in the history of feminism, it has changed from where it used to be. It started off with first wave feminism. I think it's important looking at the history, with first wave feminism being the correct advocacy for women's rights, specifically the right to vote and hold property and so on and so forth. A common misconception is that right was actually held in the UK since the 1700s, which is something that is not commonly known. In most of Europe, it predates that, actually. And only in the US really was that a major problem. And then it evolved into second wave feminism. And second wave feminism grew a slightly sharper set of teeth. And midway through the second wave feminist movement, it ran out of stuff to blame, basically. And it turned its eyes onto capitalism. And it effectively engaged with intensive communist and Marxist doctrine towards the end of the second wave, beginning of the third wave feminism. And that has largely led the movement since then. I think currently we're sitting in fourth wave feminism, which is, in simple terms, these days I define it as a cult, and I define it as a supremacy movement. No different from the KKK.
Perhaps you could stop for a moment.
Sure.
You made a statement that I heard it before and comes across from hundreds of emails and messages I received since last week, over the weekend. And actually I had to take a break to go into a detox on the River Thames with my friends and my granddaughter to clear my head. It was shocking to me when people start referring to feminists as being a cult. Could you clarify what do you mean when you are saying it's becoming a cult, Rory?
So a cult is a following or a group. I actually looked it up earlier. So there are four characteristic behaviors of cults. They follow four standard basic definitions. One is compliance with a group. One is dependence on a leader or leadership structure. One is devolving or devaluing or alienating the outsider. And the last is avoiding dissent within the group. And I think if you look at those requirements to be a cult, feminism matches all of them. in space. So nowadays, I think if you say that you have to detox from it, would you not say yourself, Marina, that you have experienced the devaluing and repression of the outsider, or by becoming an outsider, as in you have dissented from the feminist rhetoric, and because of that you have faced backlash. You're not the only one, by the way, in recent times. A good example currently, if you want two current examples, the major YouTuber and sexologist Lacey Green has recently, quote unquote, taken the red pill and left the feminist movement. She doesn't say she's left the feminist movement. She is still a staunch and ardent feminist, and I disagree with many of her views. However, she has been excommunicated from the group, and basically she, in her own words, if you go and you watch her interview with Dave Rubin on the Rubin Report, you can hear some of her experiences. It's quite horrific. Death threats, hate mail, bomb threats. The list is extremely long, and that to me sounds like the actions of a cultist group. When somebody is communicated.
Let's explain to our listeners what red pilling means, what the red pill means, because not everybody understands the concept.
So the concept of the red pill comes from a movie called The Matrix, which I believe was made in 2000 or 1999. Anyway, the concept of it is basically in the movie, Neo, the main character, is plugged into the Matrix, which is a computer program that shows us a world that we live in. And he is offered by the other or anti-hero Morpheus to take the red pill or the blue pill. And if he takes the red pill, he will see how far the rabbit hole goes. He will wake up from the reality he believes is the reality and see the real world behind the world. And that's basically the concept of the red pill, is that you take the red pill and you start to see the world for what it really is, and not the propaganda that has been put out by media, politicians, educators, in general.
This is the awakening, when you become aware of the world behind the world, and you start looking into it with an open mind, without being forced by anything and anyone to be limited, to limit your vision to what you've been told before. So, Viola,
yes, I really need to come here, and I feel a little bit touched by the name cult, because I think, because when we start putting names like this, then we kind of generalize and we belittle many people, men and women, who are working for the rights of people who don't have rights. So personally, I will not call the feminism as a cult, because I will be generalizing it, and is where I get touched and moved. I think there is movement being led by women or being led by men, and this is more, again, as a personality than as a gender. I think the people who need cults is not about gender. If we would have time here, we can mention a lot of organizations that they become cults, led by men or led by women. It's not, for me, feminism is not a cult at all. It is a movement that some of these organizations, depending on who's leading them, if they have the personality of being, I'm the boss, is my way or the highway, then it becomes too much one-sided. But this is not all feminism in the world, you know.
So do you think that there are people out there who are using feminists to take control of their community?
There is people out there who use baseball and football to take control over their community. So I think this is why I really would like to, in my participation here, would like to talk more about I mean, I understand is a conversation about feminism, but I personally would like not to generalize it because it's about personality. If you go to any group of people, doesn't matter what's the subject, depend who's leading it, that personality will be taking advantage of the community. So this is not something related to community.
Okay. Yes.
I will concede that hashtag not all feminists.
Okay.
But
how would you suggest, Viola? I will go back to Viola.
That the problem here is when the mainstream media, the large-scale organizations, are touting the propaganda and lies that have come from second, third, and fourth wave feminism and have been mutated into fact and are now being taught everywhere, all over the place, and being parroted by the President of the United States, the head Chancellor of Germany, the President of the UN Council, is being taught to to 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds in school. That's devaluing people all over the world, which is getting people no platforms, banned from speaking, not allowed to engage. It is absolutely, by definition, become a cult. Maybe not in your individual case, but I'm talking feminism, the monster that it has become, not feminism, your individual case. So in my respect here, I'm looking at it from a grand scheme. And if you would like an example of something that I consider cultish, you need look no further than Emma Watson's recent development of the He for She campaign, which whether or not you agree with feminism, she said one of the funniest things during that, and I've had such joy laughing at it for 2 years now, where in her UN speech, and I can tell you there's no men's rights activist that's standing up in UN, just by the way, in her UN speech, she asked why feminism has become such an unpopular word, and missed the irony of calling her movement He for She, which, if you want to play my favorite social justice game, it's take any words that are female and make them white, and take any words that are male and make them black, and see if black for white doesn't piss you off somewhere along the line. And that's why I call it a supremacy movement or a cult. You're more than welcome to pick which option you like, but it is a supremacy movement in its absolute form.
Well, I
I'm not saying what it used to be. Used to be different conversation. Currently, in 2017, it is a supremacy movement.
So, if you don't mind, I'm going to invite Rica Kelly, who is in Paris right now. I'm not quite sure how this is going to work, but bear with me. We are trying to bring Rica Kelly in.
But do we not just lose Viola?
I think we are going to bring her back, but for now we are trying to bring Rica. Sorry.
And I'm sure for those listening that this is a very emotional and tough and difficult conversation to have, but I think it's one that needs to happen, and I think that a little honesty is probably a good thing nowadays. It's one thing that doesn't happen very often anymore. So I think this conversation will be interesting.
Are we there, Marina? Hello.
Viola, you're back, Viola.
I'm here. I was saying that honesty is what we're gonna have, that for sure.
Okay, apparently you can only have 3 people live at a time, Marina.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so Marina, are you there with us?
I think she's swapping herself out in favor of the other participant.
Rica, okay.
Yeah, Rica.
Let's wait then.
I'm sure she wants to weigh in on this.
Are we on air, you think?
No, we are definitely on air, I think. It says we're live, apparently.
Okay. So I wanted to say that you were saying that in the UN there were no representative of the masculine right, of the men right. It's because the men had the right for many, many centuries. So in some moment we're going to have women right and men right at the same place. But I understand that for so far it has been women right because she didn't have the right. But I remember in the 90s, when we were celebrating the Women's Day in a city in Venezuela called Maracay, I applied personally to create the Men Day and did follow the protocol and try, and that didn't go through because they were celebrating, and I didn't want to keep celebrating just Women's Day because we were not minority anymore. So let's celebrate because, you know, I would say we're Latino, we'll celebrate everything. So let's celebrate men again. So it's the same institution.
We are back on. I don't know, sometimes it's not my choice of skills, but I'm trying my best to bring Rory in, and we're trying to bring Rica, who broadcasts from Paris. Seems that I'm left by myself. Please help. Let's take this to the next question. And I would like to invite in somebody who is on. Is Dr. Cheryl Chapman available, please? So we've been intrigued by the amount of interest and the controversy of the messages we've received. So we thought it is a time for everything, and now is the time to discuss feminism in 2017. Wherever you are in the world, you are welcome to ask questions. You are welcome to join us. You'll be perhaps positioned in a lobby section first. But we are taking all the questions, and we are very grateful for all your contributions. As long as you talk about your own experience, and as long as you share what feminism means to you personally in 2017. Seems that Rory is back on. We could notify him. Rory,
yeah. Back
you are back. Yes. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, apparently you can only have 3 people on the video at once. I'm not 100% sure.
Yes. This is, we're trying to bring Rica Kelly from Paris, but she got no video, so we couldn't do that. Now we're trying to bring back Viola.
I'm here.
From Chicago.
Marina, can you hear me?
We have a lot of people waiting in a lobby. So please carry on.
Marina, can you hear me?
Rory?
Yes, we can hear you, Viola.
Yes, you are on.
Do you want to exchange me by Rica for a while so we can have Rica also? Would you like that?
Rory?
Yes,
you are on. So you're saying that it is your personal experience and you've been helping other people.
Marina, Viola's just asking now whether or not you want to swap her out for the other participant, or swap me out for the other participant.
No, we want you on.
Okay.
Everybody wants you on. People are messaging me. I found it difficult to read all their messages, but everybody's saying bring Rory back on. So
the reality that feminism is not a cult. I will just say that feminism is not a cult is not a refutation of my argument.
So our intention is not to have an argument, but to have a dialogue.
I think the argument as in the philosophical argument of it, not as in a yelling match.
Is that in reality, everybody feels confused over what feminist means. Personally, I am.
I'm not
taking advantage of this confusion.
Well,
and perhaps it's time for us to bring some light into the what feminism means, what it's for, what stands for. And I know there were times where I was asking myself, is this to educate men, to ignore them, to include them? What is feminism about? But nobody came with any answers my way. So I always left that on a back burner, as if one day I will find out. And yes, now is the time.
Well, feminism is a difficult topic because even feminists can't agree on what feminism is. And I think that's part of the problem that people are facing is, to them, feminism means what's written in the dictionary, an equality movement. But that definition is not what feminism is today anymore. And it's very apparent. You don't have to look very far to see that that's the case. The problem is that some feminists are intersectional feminists, which means that they value things based on intersectionality. Some are identity politics feminists, which means that they value it based on identity politics. Others are traditional first or second wave feminists, in which case they generally fairly moderate in their approach to the world. And if you talk to a lot of them, most of them are fairly rational, reasonable people. And then, of course, you get, hardcore sex-positive feminists, which are largely behind the concept behind the slut walk, for example, which is basically women's rights to their own sexuality and to be as promiscuous as men, effectively, and for that to be socially acceptable, which I think it's one of men's great failings, to be honest, actually, is the promiscuity of men. But what's actually been funny is recent research on the promiscuity of men and women. Recent research on men and women shows the promiscuity being much the same for both, whether we're talking about before marriage or in marriage or out of a relationship or in a relationship, which is dispelling sort of common myths that occur. It's something that I suppose a lot of people have always thought with their gut is, hey, but hang on a second, there's a lot of people cheating regardless of whether they're men or women. It's been an interesting ride on that front. So the thing with feminism is that it's very hard to nail down exactly what you're referring to when you're talking about feminism. For me, I look at feminism as a group that set out to achieve goals, which was the increase in women's equality, both legally and socially. And I think to a large proportion, they've achieved that. And I think the problem that it really came down to is that they never put down the sword. And I've always loved the old quote that, if you fight monsters long enough, you've got to be careful you don't become one. And it is, I think, a case that feminism has become that monster, and is now holding, I would go so far as to say it's not just holding men back, I would say it's holding women back as well. And it's also the reason that a lot of women don't want to associate themselves with feminism, because it has become synonymous with a hate group. One need look no further than Tumblr, Twitter, Huffington Post, Jezebel, everydayfeminism.com. You pick one and go through the articles. You will see how misandric the whole concept of feminism has become. I mean, why else would feminism have started a hashtag kill all men? I mean, what more example do you need?
It is my own experience of not understanding why men are not allowed to come to women's events, or why women need to create separate events for themselves only. I could never understand that. I could never grasp the idea behind it. And I felt a little bit like, so what? They're not good enough to share the same stage of the same room with men? Why they need to go in a separate space, which is unique to them? What is that need mirroring? What is that really means for the people going to such events? And I always refused to, as much as I could, to take part, simply because I don't feel I'm a victim. I don't feel I'm less than men. I never been felt, I never been considered less than I am. So I'm very proud to be a woman, but doesn't mean I'm a feminist. I'm a human being, and I don't like to attach this label on myself. So that's my personal experience, but perhaps different people got different experiences, and I welcome them all. And this is the whole idea of this dialogue.
Yeah, I would say, you know, I mean, the first thing I want to bring up is somebody commented, I didn't see who it was, so forgive me. Somebody commented something about the patriarchy having shaped feminism. The patriarchy is a concept that was created at the end of second wave feminism, beginning of third wave feminism, which was a concept that effectively, there we go, Rica. Okay, so Rica actually said it. Yeah, patriarchy was shaped, the patriarchy shaped that image, Rory. So the patriarchy is another good example of why it's a cult, or a religion if you prefer. It's the boogeyman that can be blamed for everything. And simply put, a patriarchy does not exist in the modern Western world. In certain parts of the world, I will agree with you, there's certainly a patriarchal structure and a patriarchal society, and a governance of law. But in the modern Western world, certainly that's not the case. Not legally at any rate, and certainly not in most social settings. In fact, if you go and you dig into the numbers, you'll see it's quite the reverse. But that's a concept that feminism has touted for a very, very long time. And it is still touted as fact that the patriarchy, boogeyman, is responsible for all the woes and ills of the world, which is absolute rubbish. And you can't get a feminist to actually point out proper factual patriarchy in the modern world. But I could very easily go the other direction with problems, but it doesn't really help to have a swinging match about terms and things like that. I just don't like the concept of the patriarchy for the simple reason that, well, Christianity is a patriarchal religion, so the two are almost oxymoronic. A feminist that is a Christian is nearly oxymoronic. It's kind of like a feminist Muslim is like equally oxymoron, or Islamist is not Muslim, because you can be Muslim. Muslim is a race.
We are bringing back Viola. We had the chance to fix the connection. Thank you so much, Viola, for
I want to revisit your victim concept that you were talking about earlier. So the victim culture that has been created is actually more a problem in the whole world, I would say, these days. And it's not limited to feminism. It's actually really extensive, and it's a big, big, big problem. It teaches people very simply that there is an order or structure of oppression, what I call the oppression Olympics. So it's whoever is highest up the order of oppression, mostly due to sins of the father kind of concept. And I always have a problem punishing individuals for the sins of their father. That is a really, it's wrong punishing the sins of the father. That's like putting people in jail just because their father's father killed someone. To me, that's always wrong. I'm
going to have Viola back. So Viola wants to share.
Yes. I think I think it's important to keep it short because then the ideas fly away. And I wanted to say that many, if not any organization, that we can see it in politics, we can see it in religion, we can see it all over for that, nailing feminism in that concept. Also, I kind of started to feel about that is that many times our motivation to social change can start a movement and depend of who's moving that movement and their motivation, then transform into a power game of personalized power. So as you know, motivation to make changes in the world need to be composed from motivation to achievement, motivation to affiliation, motivation to power, to be leaders. And some movements, because of the way how that movement developed, so in some moment of their life, the leader of that movement maybe is too much oriented to motivation to power. But that we can see it all over the world is not something related to feminism. That's related to leaders. And again, it's not about gender, it's about personalities. And I just don't accept that just go into this way of talking about feminism. So I would like, if possible, of course, this is what I wish in life, and I still have hope in humanity that we can do that, is that when we're using an example, don't just focus in what we're attacking in a moment, or attacking is not the word way it is approaching, and know that be more inclusive, that is more of a human pattern, not a woman pattern. I wanted to say that. And the other thing I wanted to say that happened before, that many times in the UN or other organizations, there are no representative of men, because so far men was dominating for long years, hundreds of years, certain area, politics, art, education, religion, etc. And the woman had to fight her way through to have certain rights. And hopefully soon, none of us has representation for right, because all of us, we have the same right, or most of us have representation of rights. Personally, I've been asking for right for men. If we are celebrating Women's Day, I've been asking since the 90s to celebrate the Men Day, and that doesn't happen, but not because of women, because those institutions that I went for to ask for to celebrate the Men Day, also were led by men, and they find it, diminishing, belittling. No, we celebrate women and children because they were minority, and this. So it's not that easy to go into equality, because we need also conscious men to understand what is equality. Not only conscious women, all of us, we need to go into what means equality. Doesn't mean that we have to do exactly the same thing in a home, means that we have the same opportunity, and with integrity we have the same chances. And the other subject you talk about, Rory, about promiscuity, I wouldn't say that promiscuity is defining feminism. I would say again, coming back to personalities,
No, it's defining a branch of feminism.
My idea. So is when somebody has been repressed for a long time, and that somebody gets freedom doesn't come balanced at once. We have seen it also in different countries, not only about sexuality. We have seen it about wealth. We have seen it about domination of the land. Is just after long years of repression, the balance doesn't come at once. There is a stage of like nuisance and testing, and then there is a wave of a curve that come back to imbalance. And so I will not define or include promiscuity, or women want to be promiscuous as men are, because I don't think all men are promiscuous. I would not put men in that level. I think some personality of men are promiscuous because of their life stories. And I think some women go into that process too. So I will not define that at all as a feminism.
So, Rica, Kelly,
can I respond to the promiscuity thing first?
Yes, please.
I was referring to a specific brand of feminism, which is sex-positive feminism, not all women specifically. I was referring very specifically to one class. It's a large class, but a class of feminism that is what they advocate for, is total what's the word I'm looking for? Total
freedom about my sexuality doesn't mean promiscuity. Doesn't mean promiscuity. Freedom about my sexuality. That is my body, and I'm so much allowed to have experiences as any other person, and I'm so much allowed, but it doesn't mean promiscuity as promiscuity we understand.
I think
I'm saying that it has historically, through the evolution of that specific element or branch of feminism, evolved to the point where, if you want, I can go and haul up 20 articles about how being as actively sexual as a man is great for you.
I agree. I agree, and we can find thousands of articles about how men justify promiscuity and justify violence and justify these sharing here is not about that. I think it's about how feminism started, how it developed, and what is it that we can do caring for equality. Because if we're gonna go to search history facts, and we can look so much about male domination and promiscuity and violence and how it is justified.
Well, we can look at that, but let's look at 2000 kind of figures. So let's not look historically sins of the father. Let's look current day. So the one thing I'd like to talk about is one of the things that I see all the time with feminism and my dealings with feminists directly is I run into a wall when it comes to trying to discuss the reality of figures that are not what feminism say the reality of figures are. So one of the classic ones that's touted is domestic abuse, which is the 1 in 3 women in the USA figure, for example, is a good example of that figure. And that figure, I think it's over-exaggerated, to be honest. But
how would you say that? How would you say that if many of the women who are abused never go to the police? We know as therapists, we help them to go. As higher you are,
before you jump down my throat about that figure, can I make my point that I was getting to before you jump down my throat, like a feminist?
Yes.
Okay. On the other side of the scale, 1 in 4 men suffer domestic abuse.
That's true, and not only from women, also from men.
Well, the highest, if we're going to look at, let's look at the statistics genuinely, is if we're going to accept the 1 in 3, we must accept the 1 in 4. Okay, these are statistics based roughly on the CDC's 2010 National Institute of Partner Sex Violence Survey. That means people that came forward and actually said. So the thing that I have a problem with is this survey came out of the US. And in the US, there are over 2,000 domestic abuse shelters that only service women and girls and boys under the age of 10. That was in 2000. There's 1 in the whole US that services men and boys. 1 taxpayer-funded male domestic abuse shelter. I have never heard a feminist ever stand up and advocate in the whole domestic violence discussion about men's suffrage under domestic violence. I hear all the time about women's violence, but I hear not a peep about the domestic violence that is perpetrated against men. And in that case, I also want to bring up that the one that was opened in Canada, the domestic abuse shelter for people in Canada, that was shut down by feminists, actively shut down by feminists. And then if we jump over to the UK, Erin Prizzy was the first lady that ever founded a domestic abuse shelter for women in London. And in her own words, she had to open up one almost immediately for men, because in almost every case that the woman was violent, the man was equal. Every case that the man was violent, the woman was equally violent, either to her man or to the children as well, and vice versa. And what's very interesting is if you go and you talk to her now, she is experiencing a complete excommunication from modern feminism, and she is not even allowed to enter the building that she bought herself. That's, to me, a frightening statistic, and you don't hear it's quoted. But if you go and you listen to these feminist rallies, it is anti-woman violence, anti-woman violence, anti-woman violence, anti-woman violence, and there's never a counter-argument discussion that's ever had, or a counter-advocacy. And so, again, I make the point that feminism has become a supremacy movement.
Because people...
That's just one example.
Because people who are Rory, working against violence are the people who work for both genders. And feminism, who are working for the rights of the woman, are referring to the right of the woman in that sense. It's not that it's excluded. It had grown higher through the years, the violence with men, because both of them now, in my understanding, for many years, when the woman will be violated, she will be scared. And I understand that many women now return back, and many families children are living in how men and women can hit each other through violence. And of course, we understand when alcohol is involved and drugs is involved, violence gets higher. But it's true that also when the woman is violated physically, police don't have a lot of statistics for that because they don't go to the police. And if she is a lawyer, a doctor, a judge, higher is her position in society, more shame she feels that that's happening to her, and she will not say it to anybody. Usually that is lived in silence and loneliness.
Men?
Of course, men is also a shame that happened to him. And we understand.
Feminism is an advocacy, either it's an advocacy according to the Google definition, where it's an advocacy for equality for women, in which case if it's an advocacy for equality and for equality of the sexes between women, then I make the proposition that we should destroy 1,999 domestic abuse shelters in America. Because that's equality.
Look, if that situation, you don't destroy, you open more shelter, or you make them mixed, or you find another way. My point is that we don't have to destroy in order to build. My point is we have to learn from what we have done, and which think we have done not that good, so we build over it. Because if we keep destroying to build over the destruction, we're not going to change anything in the world. It's about how we can integrate our experience of life.
I'm not going to disagree with you. I don't think we should destroy. I'm just saying that if you want equality, then the pendulum goes both ways. And my concern, I think you and I both agree that the pendulum should go both ways. So my argument is not with you. My argument is a discussion about feminism specifically. Not me personally or you personally. And my argument is that feminism is standing in the way of that equality. It has become a supremacy movement rather than an equality movement.
I don't agree.
Very good.
So now with this in mind, and I'm sure our listeners are very grateful for you bringing in so much content, and even information are conflicting, is still an eye-opener. So please keep that tempo. It's very good for us to understand more behind the actual academic concept, what the real life concept means and how that impacts each one of us, and how is that changing the world for the generations to come. So I want to move to the next question, which is, what is your personal experience of feminism? Rory, over to you.
No. Viola first. Viola, do you want to take this one? You can go first.
Yeah. My personal experience of feminism, I told you, I'm in grown-up people life since I'm 13. I think I have been with a lot of women, being teachers, being family member, being model in society, who had worked steadily and hard being mothers and being active in the community to get more rights. I have been working a little bit with the Organización Internacional del Trabajador, OIT is Worker International Organization. And my subject about equality of salaries. And now I live in Cyprus. And I can tell you my personal experience in Cyprus is very interesting from other people where I was, is that it's more cultural than economical. Let me explain. Is that women, usually family has 1 or 2 children. And it's very interesting, if they have 2 girls, they will not look for the boys. So it's all, girls have the same right for studies and for inheritance as the boys. They are sent abroad to study. They have all same rights. When it comes, the difference of right is in the home, in when they are living together, when they are managing the home, usually the woman has much more work than the man, because still remaining, there is a remaining, cultural remaining of what man doesn't cook or man doesn't clean, or she has her master's degree and her business, etc. But at home, she's the one who does more work. So it's quite different. So as you know, in Middle East, the situation is slightly different. In South America, the woman has similar rights, and the values that we negotiate or we don't negotiate are different than in Europe. So my personal thing for feminism, more than feminism, I'm always, even in a private discussion, I get touched when there is any kind of injustice, being for men, being for women, being for race. I'm looking for equality rights, doesn't matter who we are. And this is my way of approaching it. And this is why I went into femininity and masculinity instead of feminism. But not because I'm against feminism, I just creating a differentiation so I can stand up and do another kind of work than many of my friends and colleagues are doing. That's not because, again, I tell you, it's a matter of personality. I have time now, and I can see this personality that Rory is describing in feminism all over the places. Could be a political party, could be a baseball team, could be a matriarchal or patriarchal, somebody of a family. Is a matter of personalities more than agenda.
Wow. I would like, before Rory goes on, I would like to read a message from Agatha. Agatha lives in London, and she is known for her kindness and for the way she treats people around her, not because they are men or women, just because they are amazing human beings. And she helps them while on their wave and path to excellence. Agatha says, could women robots cause damage to the feminist or damage to the soul of the masculine? The world desperately needs integrated, empowered, nurturing men, initiated into their feminine side, I think she meant, in order to become whole.
Okay.
And what is your view on this, Viola and Rory? She's asking you.
Rory.
Okay. Well, the robots thing, I don't really know how robots could cause damage to feminism. I don't really understand the implication of robots at all. But as far as the world's integration, I agree. I think men and women have largely stopped valuing each other for their strengths and their weaknesses, and how the two types of energy combine together to actually create a very strong unit, a very strong combination.
So you feel that men and women, they complete each other, they can't compete?
I think masculine energy and feminine energy complement each other. And I think that to force women to become more masculine or to force men to become more feminine, keyword here, force, is not a good thing. I don't think that people should be forced to specifically go down any path or direction. I think that the job of government and of activists should be to open the doors of opportunity for people, and then to respect their decisions within those doors of opportunity. And I think that is where my disagreement, probably my biggest disagreement with feminism comes, is that modern feminism is not keen on people's choices because it doesn't fit the narrative or the statistics that it's pushing towards. I know Viola's going insane there, but it's the experience that I have seen down this road. And you know, if you want a sort of example of it, you can look towards education statistics is a good one to look at. If we're looking in the Western world education, UK and US, currently 62% of last year's degrees were earned by women and 36 were earned by men. You'll notice that there's a 2% disparity there for non-binary genders. And then in the US, the statistic was 64% and 35% in the US. Respectively, women 64% earned the degrees and 35% earned the degrees were men. And yet, if you go and you look at all the programs that there are at the moment for women's advocacy in STEM fields, for example, or in fact, just in university in general, there's a huge drive to get women into the universities. The opportunity has already been opened. In fact, the parity has already been reached and surpassed. But still we have these advocacy groups that are saying, but the women are not being educated. But the women are not getting the degrees, which is clearly, when you look at the statistics, not true. It's just not the case. And it's not just true for the US and UK, it's true all over Europe. I don't specifically know what it looks like in Venezuela. I am aware that Venezuela's policies are a little bit more balanced than a lot of places, for some reason. I did go and read up a little bit about Venezuela, but I can tell you that the drive to one side or the other causes a lot of problems. So, for example, if we look at the medical field, there are specific choices that men and women choose in their specializations in medicine. And for example, women typically do not choose to become anesthesiologists or neurosurgeons. However, they typically do choose to go into other kinds of medicine, a lot of pediatricians and such things. And the question here is, should you force more down one path through law, or should you just allow people to choose naturally? And what has occurred in medicine is quite interesting, is there was a big push to get women into medicine, and it's gone very dramatically now the other direction. And that's even true in South Africa, funnily enough, is if you go to the universities, they're over 70% in medicine and health sciences fields female. And what happens then is you land up in a situation where in the 30s and 40s, the women drop out of the medical practice for 2 to 3 years while they're looking after their family. Now, you can always make the argument, yes, but the men can also look after the family. That's a fair argument. I know a couple of stay-at-home dads, and they love it. They have an absolute ball with it. But it doesn't tie with the way that men are hardwired or women are hardwired. Most women that I know are very nurturing naturally, and men are very aggressive or competitive naturally. And what's interesting is you see this dropout in the medical field, and the women tend to, even when they come back, work less hours because they still want to look after their family, which is entirely their right and their prerogative to do, and I've got no disagreement with that. But what you're landing up with is you're landing up with a loss of certain kinds of medical doctors, like anesthesiologists and neurosurgeons. There just aren't enough of them anymore. all over the world, and it's really becoming a big problem. And that forced mandated decision, which looks like a good idea on paper or looks like a good thing on paper, has dangerous ramifications if not looked at in the whole context of the medical field. So now we're landing up in that situation. And in fact, if you want an example, Holland specifically had this exact occurrence and now has to import doctors from all over the world, simply because they went way too far down the female doctor train before realizing their mistake and brought equal opportunity back rather than favored opportunity. So that's an interesting experience that I've seen as well. And it's very apparent. I mean, all you have to do is look at university statistics.
I'm
not going to be able to bring Rica Kelly, who is present at her office in Paris. For some reason, they don't have the ability to video their message, but I have a message from Bradley Chapman, who lives in Essex in United Kingdom.
Sure.
And he has the opinion that politically, employment and jobs wise and life status should be equally respected between men. We each have strengths and we need to respect that and use them together. What do you think about together, Viola? What is your view on men and women's ability to go over differences they might have, over conflicting arguments, and work together towards building each other instead of diminishing each other's role in society and basically in families? What is your view?
Yes.
What is your take?
I will tell you my view, and I want to say to Rory before, also for what you just exposed, Rory, we need to check statistic in university about, if you want to go into genders, which gender drop out of studies more and why that percentage of women get in. There is statistic about how many men drop out of university, and the fact that for women that is the opportunity after so many years, etc. They against how you say in English, against the wind and against the thunder, many of you. But it will be interesting to back up your what you just exposed about the drop of university and why. Because we could say, oh, it's for economical situation, they need to work, but how many of men who have the opportunity to study, etc., and why it drops? That will be very interesting. I have just a little bit of it, but anyway, we can talk more about it. It will complete the statistic, not only that women are more in this time, it's why they are more. Marina, I think this is the only way together. And also I agree that it's not about, it's about characteristic of what's the characteristic that man has, what the characteristic that women have. Because also about when we talk with feminine and masculine, we can see it in same-sex relationship, how one of them is more masculine, one of them is more feminine, one of them is about how to balance the energy. And I agree that we should not force any man or any woman to study odontology or to be a doctor or to be a plumber. Of course, the whole idea that we could be free to choose. We could be free. This is the whole idea also for women, right? That she can choose to stop working, to go and be a mother, to come back to work, to decide not to be a mother, to, you know, it's about what is it our right. So same thing for men. And I would not say women has to be out, so men has to be at home. If the man doesn't have characteristic to be at home, we cannot force it. But how? Sometime when I hear being man or being woman, doesn't matter. Somebody who said, I don't cook, you know, I feel so sorry for them. I said, how we're talking about independency, how we're talking about being self-sufficient, if that person, again, being man or woman, because many women said this now, but for years and years, men will say that, how it is that this person feel self-sufficient, feel big, they don't know how to provide for themselves a plate of food. So the idea is not to go, it's not to be who we cannot be. It's about how to find that person that can integrate with us to create a home or to create a business, and we can not half me will find a half you to be a complete one. That doesn't work. It's a whole me who's going to find a whole somebody, a whole me who's in evolution, in progression, in expansion. And for that, I need equality, I need right, I need the possibility to share like now, to be able to grow and find another whole somebody to create a family or to create a business or to create an organization. So I think integration is the point here to be able to create a more sustainable society. Definitely.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I have no disagreement with Viola at all on that front. I think I would be interesting to see the statistic that you were referring to, Viola, earlier about the dropout rate thing.
Yes.
How it ties into the graduation rate specifically. Yes. But it would be hard to deny the sheer amount of pressure that there is currently, economically and politically, on women to go to college now. And the enrollment desire of universities, what they consider positive, what is it called, positive quotas or reformation quotas, or how, I forget what the actual proper term is, but you know what I'm talking about.
We can work together on that, Rory.
It would be interesting to look at it. But yes, what I would like to look at is you know, I think the concept of togetherness is a good one. I think it's not something that anyone should strive against. In a relation between men and women, I think, but I think the two work hand in hand quite nicely together, as you so nicely pointed out. My big contention is that I think modern day feminism counters that argument. I think it's now gone to a point where it actually is trying to dissuade men and women from working together. And I've seen it a lot. I mean, you shake your head. I kind of get the feeling that you're still thinking of feminism quite a few years back compared to where it is today. And I'm looking at it today.
I'm updated.
You updated. Yeah. Well, I'm saying to you that I think that modern feminism is standing in the way of that progress.
No, I do think there's some people or some organization led by men or led by women who don't believe on that. I agree with you, but I will not call it the feminist movement at all. I would think there is some people who think conservative, who think or fundamentalist, who think that cannot happen, the togetherness. I agree with you, but I don't think those are the feminists. Those are individuals who's leading different type of organizations. And some of them
I thoroughly disagree there. I think it is the feminists, and I think it's the ones in power. And I'll give you an example of a feminist in power. Mr. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, is a feminist, a self-proclaimed feminist. And he is in power, whether or not people like it or not. And another one that's an example of a self-proclaimed one is Chancellor Merkel. Now, these are two of the most powerful people in the world with the decision-making capability and the ability to create law. And that is where feminism is dangerous, is when it can create law. And when it can create laws that are very, 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 very dangerous.
Now, name for me the one who is man-oriented.
Germany. That's exactly what's happened in Canada and Germany, is that laws have been created. At the moment, women have equal rights for, I think, pretty much everything in the Western world that men have, if not in some cases more. And I'm saying equal rights by law, if not by parity. So there's a difference between the two of them. Parity being an equal outcome and opportunity being the law. And I find it very hard for anyone to give me an example where that is not the case.
Can you name countries that are led by men who are totally pro-men, against women, how many they are, how powerful they are in the world? Because you're naming two They are pro-feminism. What about the others? Can you name them?
That are pro-men? Yeah, I can actually. I would say a large number in Africa, in the third world in Africa, Central Africa especially, very patriarchal, especially in Islamic countries. And then obviously most of the Middle East is where you're talking very Islamic countries. I would say Russia is arguably as well. In some ways they are, in some ways they aren't. It's sort of a fine line. I don't know whether they're anti-women specifically, but there are some questionable practices there. Parts of Southeast Asia as well, I would definitely say it's true there, especially somewhere like North Korea. But what's interesting is if you go and you have a good dig into most of these countries, they are not the major tank countries of the world, the trend setters of the world. Whereas I would say that, you know, the US, the UK, the EU, and so on and so forth.
How's the US in your opinion?
Sorry?
How's the US in your opinion?
The US, I think, largely legally, it's very well balanced. I think that it is due largely to the last political party, the previous president and his party for 8 years. There was a dramatic shift towards socialism in the country in general. And I think that the feminist movement really grew in steam in America there in that front. But largely, they'd already sort of achieved parity and outcome. And in fact, now the pendulum is the other direction. So now we don't have equality anymore. Now we have, or parity anymore. We have the other side of the coin. So I think America is a fairly good country, to be honest. I think if you're going to just cite the president and his stupid comments, well, sorry, I'm not going to defend one man or put an entire country of 300 and something million people on the back of one man. That's not going to be the case.
Yeah.
But
I just want to say.
And I argue that legally he hasn't done anything in disservice to women yet. So, and I say the word yet because with Trump, you never know which direction he's going at what point. So I will give you the yet at this point. But I don't think he's...
I'm answered. Thank you. I got my answer. Marina.
Yes, so I was wondering, we are approaching the end of the 90 minutes dialogue because somehow the universe created a dialogue and we benefited from very much, myself and all the people who are, I'm trying very hard to keep track of all the messages. So I think it's time for us to decide that we could meet next week, same time. But in the meantime, before you are going to share your key message for today, I would like our audience to go to Amazon or YouTube and find the movie called The Red Pill, because that will give you a different insight into the reality of what feminism means in 2017. And if anyone got any other ideas and could help us learn more about feminism, the reality behind your own experience, please do share, do contact us. An address is easily found, is going to be available to you. It's info@radioworks.world, info@radioworks.world, and we'll be very happy to invite you and join us next time. We have 1 minute, 2 minutes for each one of you for the key message. Over to you, Viola.
Thank you. Well, my key message is always go from the personal, go from the inside out. The first communication, we have power over right brain, left brain, and the way how we are aligned between what we wish, how we behave, how we act, and how this is aligned or not aligned. How is it that we go through our walk or not? And then the intra communication is much easier, and then from there it's much easier to go and lead many movements and lead in the world and be who we want to be. So for me, still very, very important to look at what wound inside is not healed yet, because this is the wound that is gonna take you in a maybe not balanced way to your fight. When we heal those wounds, we have scars, and in our scars, we have our experience that make us who we are and take us to the world to be able to hear and to be able to change opinion and to be able to balance, because all of us, we have a way of being, and through our evolution, we have expanded it or changed it or evolve on it. So it's not sculpted in stone. And this is what I wish for all of us, to keep working in the self, because a leader who's really healed inside is the leader who's going to bring a lot of healing in the outside.
Thank you so much, Viola. You've been
thank you for this space.
A major inspiration for thousands of people around the world. And surely with this topic we are launching, and we invite you to come back. There will be more people you could help. Over to you, Rory.
So my final message to everybody is that you may not like what I've said tonight, you may disagree vehemently with it, but if I achieve nothing else but to make you question your own beliefs, then I've done what I set out to do, and that is to make you think. And too often we take in the modern world the stuff that the media tells us for granted, and it is well worth going to go and have a look at what is actually out there and what's really happening. And I want to say that don't let people tell you the propaganda lies that make you see yourself as a victim. You are not a victim, be you a man or a woman, you're not a victim. And you are as strong as you allow yourself to be. And my message to women is, don't allow people to treat you like an infant. And my message to men is, don't allow society to treat you like a second-class citizen. Because women have been there and they didn't like it, and you shouldn't like it either. So you are allowed to say you don't like it. Okay, that's my message to everybody. Thank you very much, Marina, for the platform, and I look forward to doing this again. And thank you, Viola, for your wonderful discussion.
Thank you, Roy. Nice to be here.
So
thank you, Marina. Beautiful.
For me personally, I have to say I'm very grateful that you started this dialogue, and I think it's been a very successful meeting of the minds. People from different cultures, from different backgrounds, people with different experiences, sharing and combining answers they found for themselves. So sharing those answers gives us the hope to go inside our own experiences and learn more about what is happening in 2017. Is feminism at the crossroad in 2017? What is going from here? So honestly, I think it's us to decide. I think it's us to make it happen. And I think it's each one of us to understand where do we want to go next. From all of us, until next time, share your stardust. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.